The silent void of space shattered with a single transmission. Alert! Enemy warship identified, humans are here. The message echoed across the command deck of the Zorvith Dominion's dreadnought, Sovereign Blade. Commodore Vexix's mandibles clicked in irritation as his second-in-command, Subcommander Redhar, snapped to attention. Impossible, Vexix growled, his spined crest flaring in disbelief. Human warships do not venture this deep into Dominion-controlled space. They know better than to challenge us directly. But the sensor data did not lie. A single vessel had just breached the outer perimeter, moving with an unrelenting trajectory toward Zorvith Prime, the Dominion's capital world. On screen, the holoviewer flared to life, revealing the enemy ship. It was small, too small for a proper warship, yet something about it sent a shiver down Vexix's spine. Its hull was plated in matte black armor, angular and predatory. There were no visible markings, no insignia, just an eerie, deliberate silence as it cut through the void like a knife. What is that thing? Redhar hissed. Vexix narrowed his eyes. He had studied humanity extensively, out of necessity, not respect. The Zorvith had been crushing minor human outposts for years, forcing them back into their home territories. Humans were persistent, but they had never dared to engage the Dominion in open warfare. Not until now. Identify it, Vexix ordered. His bridge crew scrambled to comply. Seconds passed, then the answer came, and it was disturbing. Sir, it's broadcasting under a Terran Alliance identifier, but it's not in any known warship class, a technician reported, his scaled fingers trembling over the console. No registry. No records. It's unclassified. Vexix's mandibles twitched. An unregistered human warship, entering Dominion space alone? This is a trick, Redhar sneered. A scout maybe. A rogue element. Humans would never dare send just one ship against us. Vexix wasn't so sure. He had fought humans before. They didn't always do what was logical, but what they did was always dangerous. Open a channel, he ordered. A static-filled pause then. This is Commodore Vexix of the Zorvith Dominion. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be fired upon. Silence. Then the human ship answered. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, almost amused. Your warning is noted, Commodore. But we're not here to talk. Before Vexix could respond, the ship vanished. Not jumped. Not turned away. It simply blinked out of existence. A wave of stunned silence spread across the bridge. No known human vessel could cloak, let alone vanish entirely. What? Redhar slammed his clawed fist onto the console. Where did it go? Reacquiring, the sensor officer barked. Wait, it's... Before he could finish, the ship reappeared, but now it was directly behind them, within the Sovereign Blade's defensive perimeter. Alarms howled. Vexix's instincts screamed at him. This wasn't a normal ship. This was something else. Something worse. Shields up. Fire all forward batteries. The Dominion dreadnought's main cannons swiveled to target the human vessel. Plasma charges surged through the barrels, lighting up the void with energy. The shots never landed. The human ship twisted, too fast for anything of its size, darting through the incoming fire like a predator avoiding clumsy swipes. Then it retaliated. A single, thin beam of blue light lanced out from the human vessel. Not a broadside. Not a missile barrage. Just one shot. And yet, the Sovereign Blade's shields collapsed instantly. No. Impossible. Vexix roared. His screens flickered with critical damage warnings. His flagship, the pride of the Dominion fleet, was crippled by a single human strike. Then the human voice returned, calm, steady, like a blade pressed against a throat. We didn't come here to negotiate, Commodore. We came to deliver a message. A cold feeling settled over Vexix's exoskeleton. Message? He rasped. The human ship drew closer, so close that its hull nearly brushed against his viewport. Then the voice spoke again. Tell your Dominion that the war they thought was over is just beginning. And with that, the human vessel vanished again. But this time it didn't return. Vexix stood frozen. His fleet's strongest warship had been neutralized in seconds by a single enemy vessel. And worse, the humans had warned them, not attacked. Redhar broke the silence, voice shaking. Sir, what do we do? Vexix swallowed the bitter taste of fear. We call for reinforcements, he said quietly. And we prepare for war. Because whatever humanity had just unleashed, this was only the beginning. Panic spread through the Zorvith Dominion's high command like wildfire. Commodore Vexix watched as his bridge crew scrambled to recover from the human attack, their movements frantic and desperate. Warning klaxons blared through the Sovereign Blade's command deck, the emergency lighting casting eerie shadows over his officers. "This ship is crippled," Subcommander Redhar growled, his mandibles twitching with barely contained rage. "A single human vessel did this, one ship. We should be the ones delivering threats, not them." Vexix remained silent, staring at the viewport where the human vessel had vanished. Something wasn't right. Humans were reckless, yes. Resourceful, undeniably. But they weren't suicidal. If they had meant to strike first, they would have destroyed the Sovereign Blade completely. Instead they left them alive, with a warning. "Open a Dominion-wide channel," Vexix ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The communication officer hesitated. "Sir, with our main relay damaged, we can only send short-range transmissions." "Then send it to every ship in our sector. Now." The officer nodded and began broadcasting. "This is Commodore Vexix of the Sovereign Blade. We have encountered an unidentified human warship with capabilities beyond known technology. It has compromised our flagship's defenses and neutralized us in seconds. All Dominion forces are to go on full alert. We are now at war." He cut the transmission and turned to Redhar. "Status of our remaining ships." "The Warbringer and the Devourer are en route," Redhar replied. "Our fleet will be at full strength within the hour." "Good." Vexix clenched his claws. "Because when that human ship returns, we will be ready." A phantom in the darkness. Aboard the human warship Oblivion, Captain Elias Dorn watched the Sovereign Blade struggle to recover from his ship's attack. Through the tactical display, he could see the Dominion forces mobilizing, attempting to regroup. "They're scared," said Lieutenant Nyla Vasquez, his tactical officer. "I don't think they've ever encountered anything like us before." Dorn allowed himself a small smile. That was the point. For years, humanity had fought a losing battle against the Dominion. The Zorvith had crushed human colonies, enslaved their people, and burned entire planets to the ground. The Terran Alliance had been pushed back, retreating further and further, until they had no more ground to give. That was when Project Revenant was born. Oblivion was its first success. A warship unlike anything humanity had ever fielded before, equipped with a prototype phase shift drive capable of slipping between dimensional layers, rendering it invisible to conventional sensors and untouchable by enemy fire. With a zero-point energy cannon capable of collapsing shield harmonics in a single shot, the ship wasn't just a weapon. It was a ghost. A nightmare. A message. Dorn turned to his chief engineer, Commander Roland Bain. "How much longer can we sustain phase shift?" Bain checked his console. "Not long. Maybe another 5 minutes before we need to drop back into normal space. The drive's running hot." Dorn nodded. "Then we make this count." He turned to Vasquez. "Target the Warbringer, make them see us. Just for a second." Vasquez grinned. "With pleasure." Oblivion flickered into visibility for less than a heartbeat, just long enough for the Warbringer's sensors to register them, and for Vasquez to fire. The blue energy lance cut through the void, striking the Warbringer's midsection. Its shields didn't just collapse, they shattered. Explosions ripped through the ship's hull, tearing through armor plating like paper. Then Oblivion vanished again. Back on the Sovereign Blade, chaos erupted. "They've reappeared," Redhar shouted. Vexix's eyes snapped to the tactical display just in time to see the Warbringer's hull rupture, entire decks imploding into the vacuum of space. One hit. One shot. And a Dominion battleship was already spiraling out of control. How are they doing this? Unknown. The Warbringer's crew was screaming over the comms, desperate, panicked. Before Vexix could issue an order, the human ship vanished again. This isn't war. This is slaughter. The trap is set. Despite the panic, Vexix was no fool. The humans were powerful but not invincible. Every weapon had a weakness. "Order the fleet to fire at maximum dispersal," he commanded. Redhar frowned. "We can't even see them." "Exactly," Vexix replied, his mandibles clicking. "But their ship exists in our space even if we can't perceive it. If we saturate the area with enough plasma fire, we may force them to reappear." His orders were relayed, and within seconds, every Dominion ship opened fire, filling the void with energy blasts. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a distortion. A flicker. There. Oblivion reappeared, not by choice but by force. Their phase shift drive failed under the sheer amount of energy saturating the battlefield. "They're exposed." Redhar roared. All ships focus fire. The Dominion fleet unleashed hell. The humans' last gambit. Phase drives offline. Bane shouted, alarms blaring across Oblivion's bridge. Dorn's mind raced. They had walked straight into a trap. Vasquez's fingers danced over the tactical console. Incoming fire. We're taking heavy hits. Explosions rocked the ship. Shields flickered then failed entirely. Hull breaches registered across multiple decks. They wouldn't survive another volley. Dorn's jaw tightened. Time for Plan B. Redirect all power to the main cannon, he ordered. Bane hesitated. Captain, if we do that. We don't have a choice, Dorn cut him off. Target the Sovereign Blade. We end this now. Vasquez locked onto the Dominion flagship, her expression grim. Firing solution set. Dorn exhaled slowly. Then, fire. The 0-point cannon roared, unleashing a blast so bright that even the distant Zorvith Prime would see it. The Sovereign Blade's hull warped and twisted under the sheer force of the impact. For a moment, it seemed like the dreadnought would hold. Then, it detonated. A shockwave rippled through space, sending Dominion vessels careening in all directions. The mighty flagship of the Zorvith Dominion was no more. Oblivion, crippled but victorious, vanished once more. And in the silence that followed, every surviving Dominion captain came to the same horrifying realization. Humanity wasn't the prey anymore. They were the hunters. The Sovereign Blade was gone. Commodore Vexix had been on the bridge when the human warship Oblivion fired its final devastating shot. He had felt the explosion before his mind could even register what had happened. Now, drifting among the debris in an emergency pod, he could only listen, to the panicked screams of his officers over comms, to the agonized cries of dying Dominion warriors, and to the eerie silence that followed where the Sovereign Blade had once stood. One human warship had done this. His mandibles twitched. His spined crest trembled with barely contained rage. This cannot stand, he rasped, gripping the communicator with shaking claws. All surviving Dominion forces, regroup at Zorvith Prime immediately. We are launching a full-scale counterattack. His orders were met with stunned silence. Then a reply came through, Admiral Zoker, commander of the Dominion's core fleet. Commodore, the Admiral's voice was cold, but beneath it, there was an unmistakable note of fear. Are you telling me that your fleet was annihilated by a single human ship? Vexix swallowed his pride. Pride had cost him enough already. Yes, he admitted. And unless we act now, more will follow. Another pause. Then, understood, Zoker said grimly. All Dominion war fleets are to mobilize immediately. We will burn humanity's last hope to ash. The channel cut off and Vexix exhaled shakily. The war he had always believed to be over was only just beginning. Oblivion's next move. Aboard the Oblivion, Captain Elias Dorn leaned back in his chair, watching as Zorvith Prime's defense grid came to life. They're pissed, Lieutenant Nyla Vasquez said, smirking as the Dominion's largest war fleet began massing over the capital world. We got their attention. Dorn nodded. That had been the point. Oblivion had been built not to win battles, but to change the war. The Dominion had believed humanity was broken. That was their mistake. They had fought weak, desperate humans, until now. But Project Revenant had changed everything. Any word from command? He asked. Vasquez checked her console. They got our transmission. The rest of the Revenant fleet is standing by. The moment we confirm the Dominion's full forces are engaged, they'll strike every major Zorvith outpost at once. Dorn allowed himself a small smile. Perfect. The Dominion had been ruthless, efficient, unstoppable. But they had never faced an enemy like this before. They had never fought an enemy that wasn't playing by their rules. Bring us into position, he ordered. Let's give them one more reason to fear us. The Battle of Zorvith Prime begins. On the bridge of the Dominion command ship, Warlord's Wrath, Admiral Zoker stood tall, his crimson exoskeleton glinting in the harsh lighting. His species had ruled unchallenged for centuries. That was about to change. Sir, an officer reported. We've located the human vessel. Zoker's mandibles curled. Destroy it. Immediately. The entire fleet, hundreds of Dominion warships, opened fire at once. But as before, the Oblivion vanished. For a long moment there was only silence. Then, the human warship reappeared, but this time, it wasn't alone. Zoker's eyes widened. No. That's impossible. Dozens of Oblivion-class warships emerged from the void, each identical to the first. They weren't here to fight the Dominion. They were here to end them. The battle had begun. The void above Zorvith Prime had never been so alive with fire and fury. Admiral Zoker stood on the command deck of the Warlord's Wrath, eyes locked onto the impossible sight before him. Not one, but dozens of Oblivion-class human warships had materialized, each bearing the same deadly capabilities as the one that had annihilated the Sovereign Blade. "Their technology is not meant for war," one of his officers stammered. "It is meant for extermination." Zoker refused to believe it. For centuries, the Zorvith Dominion had ruled the stars, subjugating weaker races, crushing rebellions, burning entire civilizations to the ground. And now, here was humanity, a species they had dismissed as little more than scavengers and pests, standing on the precipice of doing the impossible, defeating them. Zoker clenched his claws. "We are still the Dominion. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. We destroy." His voice carried across the bridge, steady, resolute. "Target the nearest warship. Unleash everything we have." The Warlord's Wrath led the charge, its forward batteries unloading a devastating barrage toward the nearest human vessel. Plasma, disruptor beams, and kinetic slugs streaked through the void. The human ship did not evade. For a moment, Zoker thought they had landed a direct hit. Then the human ship's hull shifted, the weapon's fire phased straight through it as though it wasn't there at all. "By the gods," an officer whispered. "They're using dimensional shifting mid-combat," another gasped. "They can make themselves intangible." Zoker's mandibles twitched. No, this was not war. This was mockery. And then the real attack began. The humans strike back. On the bridge of the Oblivion, Captain Elias Dorn watched the Zorvith fleet unleash its full destructive fury. "Is it just me," Lieutenant Nyla Vesquez muttered, "or are they getting desperate?" Dorn exhaled slowly. "Desperate enemies make mistakes. Let's make sure this is their last." He turned to his weapons officer, Commander Roland Bain. "Target the Warlord's Wrath. Full power to the zero-point cannon. We finish this now." Bain's hands danced over the controls. Charging main cannon. Across the battlefield, every Oblivion-class warship did the same, their weapons building to a catastrophic crescendo. The Dominion fleet knew fear for the first time. Zoker's mandibles clicked furiously. Incoming fire, evasive maneuvers. The Warlord's Wrath twisted hard to starboard, banking away from the human flagship. Several other Zorvith ships attempted the same. It didn't matter. The first Oblivion-class warship fired. Its energy lance pierced straight through a Dominion battlecruiser, reducing it to a glowing husk before its remains imploded into the vacuum. Another fired, a destroyer split cleanly in half. Another, 3 corvettes vanished in a flash of blue energy. Then Oblivion fired. A singular, focused beam lanced through the void, striking the Warlord's Wrath directly amidships. Zoker had seen many warships take damage before. Never like this. The ship did not explode immediately, it unraveled, its very structure collapsing in on itself as the zero-point energy destabilized its molecular cohesion. The bridge shattered. The hull crumpled inward. The mighty command ship of the Dominion Core fleet disintegrated in seconds. The moment it vanished, a deathly silence fell across the Zorvith fleet. Their leader was gone. And their will to fight died with him. The last stand of the Dominion. Commodore Vexix had barely escaped the destruction of the Sovereign Blade. Now, aboard the damaged battlecruiser Devourer, he watched helplessly as humanity did what no race had ever done before. They were dismantling the Dominion fleet ship by ship. The Oblivion-class warships were untouchable. They shifted through enemy fire, struck with surgical precision, and vanished before counterattacks could land. And as the Zorvith forces fell one by one, Vexix felt something he never thought possible. Doubt. Was this what every species before them had felt when the Dominion came to burn their worlds? Was this what helplessness felt like? He gritted his teeth. "We have to retreat. Now." His officers stared at him in shock. "Sir?" Vexix closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, then repeated himself, his voice low and hard as steel. "We are leaving now." There was no honor in staying. There was only extinction. The Devourer and the remaining Dominion warships turned and fled, their engines flaring at maximum burn. And humanity, let them go. The message is clear. From orbit, Captain Elias Dorn stared down at the burning remains of Zorvith Prime. The Dominion was finished. Their fleet was shattered. Their leaders dead. And now, the world that had once stood at the center of their vast empire lay exposed. Vasquez exhaled. "Do we finish the job?" Dorn was silent for a long moment. The Zorvith had never hesitated to burn human colonies to the ground. They had enslaved, butchered, and treated humanity as nothing more than vermin. But now the tables had turned. And that was a message greater than any bombardment could send. "No," Dorn said at last. "Let them live. Let them tell the galaxy what happened here today." His crew exchanged glances but said nothing. Oblivion turned from the battlefield, its mission complete. And in the darkness of space, the legend of the human warship spread like wildfire. The Dominion was no longer the galaxy's supreme power. Humanity was. And